Hey everyone, this is George Soto and you're watching Startups Unedited.
Hey everyone, this is George Soto with Soto Ventures. Hope all is well and hope everyone's having a fantastic morning. I am absolutely elated to be joined by Mark Ruthfield, who is the VP of Sales at Yesware in Boston, and my very dear friend Ralph Barsi, Ralph, now you're running global sales development at ServiceNow in the Bay Area. Is that right?
That's correct. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Mark, how are you?
Excellent, George. Great to see you guys, and very excited for this conversation.
Fantastic. So, today we're going to really be talking about leadership, of course. However, how do you empower and inspire our reps to be great? Ralph, we've talked a lot about, the notion of really being a mindful leader, mindful manager. Before we get into that, why don't you just kind of quickly give the audience a quick background on yourself?
Sure, happy to. I'm Ralph Barsi. I oversee the global sales development organization at ServiceNow. Today, that's comprised of about 100 people in 7 offices around the globe. I am based in the Bay Area here in Silicon Valley. I've been in sales for about 23 years now. Half of my career has been spent as an individual contributor, and the other half has been spent building and leading sales development teams in particular. So that's a bit on my background personally. I've been a drummer my entire life. I love music. I'm a family guy. I've got a wife celebrating 20 years of marriage this year, and I have 3 boys, and life is good. No complaints over here.
Awesome. Mark.
Yeah, I'd love to share a little bit about myself as well. So I've been in sales for over 20 years. I came over to Yesware back in September of 2015. Prior to that, headed up sales over at Zoom Information. I've been very active with the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals. Proud and honored to be have won that top 25 prestigious award. We've actually got a lot going on here. Doubled in our sales team since September, and why this topic is really of passion to me is actually my father, who had passed away last June due to cancer. He was in education for about 30 years, and I saw him go from a teacher to assistant principal, assistant superintendent, and then superintendent most recently of Ashland Public Schools in Ashland, Massachusetts. And as a kid, I used to go to his school and play basketball while he helped teachers and administrators. And I just saw the effect that he had on people that he worked with and helped that. And at his funeral, actually, there was over 400 people. And just seeing the impact that he had on people's lives, that's really what I've taken on from his leadership with my teams in sales over the years, and why I'm so passionate about leadership and personal career growth goals. And I feel that if you can get the personal career growth goals taken care of, the company goals follow. So just a little background as to why I'm so passionate about this topic.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for sharing that, and of course, my thoughts. What is leadership at its core? I've been asking this question now for the last year or so. I've done some content and have interviewed some folks. But what is leadership at its core? Irrespective of what we do as a career.
For me, leadership means to serve. So in the example Mark gave of his father, your impact is exponential, and at your funeral and at your memorial, when you have hundreds of people there showing the impact you've made in their lives, that comes from service and being a servant to them and giving everything you've got to basically empower them in their own lives to expose their own unique gifts and strengths. So that's how I've always seen leadership. It's somebody that pulls a team towards a goal versus push them. And I think everybody's got the will within them, and it's up to the leader and the strong leader to tease that out of each individual.
Now, Ralph, you and I have talked about how do we actually condition ourselves as managers, as leaders of groups, to be mindful, to be service oriented, to be in a position to serve and empower and inspire, our reps or the folks that we're, given an opportunity to lead or work with. How do you start to do that as a leader, as that individual?
Sure. So it starts from within. You first and foremost, just being mindful is about being present. It's not about being anxious about the future and being uncertain about what's to come. It's not about being depressed about what has happened in the past. Instead, it's just about being present to the moment. And also, with respect to the people around you that you're serving, start by putting a 10 on their forehead, and giving them the benefit of the doubt. Everyone has their own story and their own narrative, and you just have to be mindful and present of what that story is, and stay in the sunlight and try to draw out the very best attributes of everyone's narrative and help them find it themselves, because a lot of people don't know that they have it. So if you're present to them and present to the moment, you can help draw it out of them.
Thank you for that. Mark, what are your thoughts around that?
No, I couldn't agree more with what Ralph had said. Very impressive, obviously, why he's so successful in leading his team there. I'm a big fan of basically, everyone has different strengths, different areas for improvement, different personal career growth goals. I think it's really just taking the time to have those discussions to see what those are and putting together a plan on how to get there and achieve them, right? And I think as leaders, one of the things I've always tried to do is really just simplify everything we do in our day-to-day, and with regard to sales specifically, across the sales process, right? I mean, how do you just make things so repeatable across the entire sales process and just have structure and best practices in place? When there's something gray, make it black and white. Whenever there's an end goal in line, be transparent about things. Ralph had talked about being mindful and present. I'm always a big fan of just being completely transparent on what we're trying to do, and then really just utilize your leadership team as well as the what I call sales dream team, and just find ways to get there together. But transparency has always worked for me.
Transparency is a powerful topic. What does that mean in regards to the day-to-day operations or communications of your team? And so to elaborate, sometimes there are things that you sort of sit there and you say, is this something that I can share with my team? Is this too much? Am I going to be sort of maybe too forward or too direct with Rep A, who's maybe not doing as well? Like, how do you sort of understand what's too transparent and or what's too raw or too direct?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, go ahead, Ralph. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you're of the mindset, George, of win-win and making sure that the outcome that everyone is after benefits everybody in the process, then it's very easy to be transparent. So, for example, you talked about day-to-day operation. If the leaders are very clear and very specific in their communication efforts via email or on an internal conference call, et cetera, about, hey, we need to knock this out, we need to embrace the day-to-day grind in order to get to this outcome where everyone will win in the end, you'll get a groundswell of effort working with you towards the same common goal. And that has worked for me time and time again. I find that being transparent and exposing yourself to the outcome that you're after really helps everybody win.
Got it. Mark, what's your take on it?
Yeah, couldn't agree with Ralph more. And I think that, I think it's really just taking the time to have the conversations on what the expectations are, right? And just really explaining why things are important, showing how to do things before you can inspect and expect, right? And I think once you actually explain, share, you have the right to expect, and then you have the right to have these discussions on a more macro level on how to raise the overall performance and strategy of the team. I mean, the whole goal is to rally around the team, and how can we continuously raise our game. You know, like in George, I know we've talked in previous conversations like that movie Invictus with Nelson Mandela, right? Like, how do we, that scene with leadership with Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon, like how do we all exceed our own expectations, right? And I think a lot of that is, once you understand what's important to people, share expectations, you know, it really opens the door to transparency to work towards that goal, right?
That's right. Absolutely. And, you know, so what I think I hear is being able to really be super, super, super clear about what the expectations are, you know, be super clear about the culture of transparency, and then being able to merely hold each other accountable for those commitments that we've made to each other. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you kind of share the outcome that you're pursuing or even attracting, however you want to look at it, the universe around you will unfold and help you get to where you're trying to go. The same applies in business and in leading teams. And you know, I guess it's cliche, but it's got to be reinforced and mentioned over and over again. But you got to lead by example. Unless you're walking the walk, no one's really going to rally behind you. So you've got to put the first foot forward sometimes, and you have to do it shamelessly.
You know, I love that. I really think that's one of the most powerful ways of empowering and inspiring our people, right? Being able to lead by example. You know, I had a mentor of mine, Brian Ross, who used to say, George, you can't lead people to places you're not willing to go yourself.
That's right.
You know, and so, and it's really interesting because there's so many topics now, you know, within the category of leadership or discussions rather, you know, around these millennial workforces who are, you know, I just missed it by a couple of years. I guess I'm Gen Y or YJ, whatever it is. But you know what's, I know that you, both of you really, you know, have part of your team that fall into that category of the millennial employee. You know, how do you really, you know, sort of motivate and inspire and empower these types of folks, which, you know, I mean, these folks are digital, you know, were brought up with Snapchat and Facebook from day one. You know, they don't know anything else, right? Their communication is heavy digital. You know, I would say attention spans are absolutely, you know, a little different, right? Even mine, being adapting computers when I was a teenager, you know, I can already see the effects that it's had on my attention. How do you, Mark, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. How do you actually start to connect with that generation when there is perhaps a separation there?
Yeah. So great. It's a great question. So I couldn't agree more with Ralph on leading by example, and I think an example of when I came into Yesware, you know, they were really using these instant message things heavily in communication, whereas I haven't done that in the past. So that was me adapting to the style of communication. But I think it's, you know, really, I think you have to share why things are important. You know, we really you know, put a new organizational structure in place, really put sales process and best practices in place from A to Z together, and I think it's showing them, you know, what they've been doing in the past is good, but there's better ways to do things. Show them how to do it, and an example is with our SDR team. You know, we do a lot of the Jeff Hoffman, John Barros, Why You Now, the Basho, the Kensite Partners, and we've taken it actually to a high level, leveraging our investors, our executive team, our advisors to broker introductions to our company personas and the buyer personas at those companies. And we really utilize social media in our outbound prospecting, and how do you rise above the noise. And that process wasn't here before I got here. So I think it's really, you know, taking the time to understand why people are doing what they're doing, and then just, you know, like Ralph said, I would never ask my team to do something that I would not do, and actually lead by example on that. We've totally changed, and we've gone from setting up, we've tripled our buyer conversations from our outbound SDR team over the last 3 months through this process.
Well, I would argue that you're on this show this morning leading by example. So thank you. Right. Ralph, how do you connect with millennials? How do you, as a leader now, get the best and inspire and empower these folks?
Yeah, so first of all, I don't label them. I don't look at them as millennials. They're people, and if it's a person with a short attention span that's really hip in digital technology and more hip than me, then this is somebody I can learn from, and these are strengths that I'm going to leverage for our business to move us forward. So if I happen to be dealing with somebody who has a short attention span as a leader, I'm going to have them focus on tasks that bring them from point A to point B versus point A to point Z. And I'll make sure that we're hustling and we're taking advantage of their short attention span. There's so much we're overwhelmed with today in terms of information and insights, and it's just coming at us, in waves. And it's the quote millennial, or it's the person with that short attention span that is likely a lot more nimble, that can sort through that wave of information and insights a lot faster than maybe I can. So I'm going to put them in a spot on our team where we need those strengths, and I'm going to make sure that they shine. I'm not going to look at them as they're not the same generation as me. Frankly, I don't care. I'm going to utilize the strengths that they're bringing to the table to better our business.
Awesome. Well, guys, I know we're running up on the hour. If you're a startup founder, because on this show we focus on the entrepreneurial experience, of course, leadership and empowerment, and these sort of other business topics are absolutely applicable to the entrepreneur, whether it's day one or day 1,000 of their business. If you were a founder trying to think about how do I actually develop a service-oriented, service-minded, leadership program here, or leadership culture, what are like one or two sort of tips that you would provide this founder with? So again, how do we start to develop a culture around leading by example, all the things that we talked about, empowering people, being compassionate, being mindful? Mark, maybe you can kick it off. Just again, what are one or two tips?
Yeah, so I think that what we've done here at Yesware is an example. So we actually have 5 Yesware core values. So actually identifying what those core values you want to have and instill, not just on a sales team, but from the top down across all areas, cross-functionally. So I think if you can identify what the values are that you want to get out of each and every person at your firm, I couldn't recommend starting there. And haven't always had that in the 20+ years of sales that I've been in, and it really resonates here. And I think it's really again, leading by example. You need someone that heads up sales or that's done this before, that's rolled up the sleeves. So like we've been talking about, leading by example, and really just showing people to focus 100% of their time and activity on what we can control. Being able to look ourselves and our peers in the eyes before we leave every day, have that accountability, the expectations, and obviously you want to have a good organizational structure from a support standpoint, good process in place. But I think the values, the accountability, and the expectations is what I would recommend.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ralph.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts?
For me, any entrepreneur is impressive to me, and I'm amazed by the moxie that it takes to be an entrepreneur. So my hat's always off to entrepreneurs, and if I can shed any light, not even being one, what I see, the ones who are succeeding are the ones who are really present to the marketplace and listening to the marketplace, because it's the market that really pulls your business where it needs to go. So just be aware of the marketplace, listening to it, and being ready to make adjustments and course corrections you have to be listening closely enough to know when it's time to maybe make a change. I also think that, to quote Gary Vaynerchuk, you got to really triple down on your strengths and not focus so much on your areas of improvement or your weaknesses. Do what you do great, because we, the marketplace, we need it, and we need you to show us what you've got. So that would be my advice for entrepreneurs starting out or just on their own continuum right now, is to keep those components in mind.
Fantastic. Mark, if folks want to get in touch, contact with you, want to get in touch with you, tweet, Facebook, what's the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn, Twitter at Mark, M-A-R-K, Ruthfield, R-U-T-H-F-I-E-L-D. My email address is mruthfield@yesware.com. Cell phone, 508-277-8446.
Awesome. Ralph?
Sure, on Twitter at rbarsi, R-B-A-R-S-I. I have a blog, ralphbarsi.com. It's RALPHBARSI.com.
Fantastic.
Yeah, stoked to be here, George and Mark. Really happy to talk to you guys today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, guys.
Absolutely. Well, let's all lead by example, try our best, educate and inspire as many folks as we can, and try to leave our legacy. How about it?
Sounds good.
Sounds great.
All right, gentlemen. We'll have a great day. We'll be talking shortly.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
See ya.